imagine we have two people. I say, we need someone who's maybe conversational in Spanish, and you're going to be a greeter at a party. So that's example one.
Mm.
Example two is now if I say, I'm going to drop you in a random Spanish speaking country, I'm going to drop you in Colombia, and your goal in the next week is to convince someone to go on a date with you. That's a totally different outcome.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Poquillo, the podcast. Today, we have a special guest, Anthony Holloway. Hopefully, I pronounced your last name correctly. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I guess before we get started, I usually like to give a little intro about our guest. So, for Anthony, you specialize in helping founders and hiring managers recruit top talent, and you were employee number 12 at Woobot Health, and you were also their very first recruiter. You've seen firsthand what happens when you get hiring right, and also when they do hiring wrong. So I'm super excited for this conversation. As I've mentioned to you earlier, I am working right now at a startup as I built my business on the side. So I could relate a lot with the things that you mentioned in our pre-call as we prep for this podcast, and also with the YouTube videos that you have in your YouTube channel. So thanks again for making time to meet with me and share all of your knowledge with our audience.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Perfect. So I shared a bit about you, but it's nothing like sharing it from firsthand from our guests. So I guess I want to ask you in your own words, could you tell us a little bit more about your background? How did you go from being an early employee to helping founders build their teams? Because that's what you do now full time.
Yes, absolutely. Well, early in my career, prior to being a recruiter, I was a career coach. So I
Mhm.
have a deep empathy for what candidates go through, what they continue to go through. Finding a job is a deep part of our identity as human
Mhm.
beings, and it can be really difficult. So early on in my career when I started recruiting, I was like, let me just do the opposite of what all of my candidates experience, right?
Interesting.
And at first, I thought recruiting was about filling roles as fast as possible. But
Hmm.
once I got into high growth startups, I realized speed without systems doesn't create freedom, it just creates chaos. So the right hire and the right person on your team can change the trajectory of your company, but the wrong hire can slow your progress down, drain your energy as a founder, and quietly also damage your culture. I think that's a big part of it too. As you said, Gabby, I was employee 12, the first recruiter at a mental health startup called Wobot, where our mission was to make digital therapy more radically accessible through our AI ally. So I grew that team from 12 to 100 to over 100 employees.
Wow.
And we raised more than $120 million in venture capital while I was there. But when I joined, our hiring systems were broken, and that's saying it kindly. So interviews were inconsistent. Leaders were really stressed out because they couldn't confidently predict and forecast being able to
Mhm.
hire and have the right head count. And again, at that early stage, when you're 5, 10, even 15, 20 people, one bad hire doesn't just hurt. It could set your product back. It could damage your culture or even just damage your brand in the eyes of your
Yeah.
customers. So I shifted my focus from just trying to be about speed and filling jobs really quickly to how do I build recruiting engines? How do I build
Mhm.
systems that are repeatable that we can uh, trust? And
Yeah.
that meant having a way to launch every role in a thoughtful way. That meant having deeper partnerships with our hiring managers, deeper empathy, and creating a candidate experience that actually reflected what our company culture looks like. I know recruiters get a bad name So I just tried to do the opposite of what I saw in the market. And as you said, now I work with startups as a fractional head of talent
Mm-hmm.
where I do a balance of recruiting, building the systems, but also executive coaching, right? Working with founder led startups facing similar bottlenecks and trying to hire. And the question your audience, I think, needs to consider after just studying some of your YouTube channel content, which is phenomenal, is
Thank
how
you.
do you scale your company when everything depends on you, the
Yeah.
founder?
Mm-hmm.
And you really can't. So a business where everything depends on you isn't sustainable, and is usually a signal that not that the founder needs to work harder, but that their systems haven't matured yet. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something that we can totally design. And, closing out, I think what makes me a little bit different is that I have an operator mindset, but I pair that with systems thinking. That means I can zoom out and think strategically about what needs to be done and why, but I'm also willing to roll up my sleeves and help founders get in the weeds, do the work such that they're not the bottleneck. And the work that I'm really most excited for going into 2026 and to keep doing um, is this, but I'm also hoping to break into new industries. Like I really want to get into aerospace. I'm trying to
Oh,
put it out
interesting.
there into the universe. My dream is to either go to space or at least support really smart people that are doing cool things in outer space. So that's a little bit about me.
That's very interesting. I didn't know you were a career coach before this. So I think that's really special because you've seen both sides, right, of the coin, right? So like people, you're helping people that need a job and now people that need those hires. I think it's so interesting because you're able to acknowledge, what both are looking for,
Yes.
and avoid the mistakes if you only knew one side. I think that's really amazing. Um, Also, I go to this networking event. So because I live in the Galveston, Houston area, on Wednesdays we meet at NASA Space Center. And so, anyways, thanks
Okay.
for letting me know. I'll keep an eye out in case.
Hey, keep your boy in mind. Keep your boy in mind. I am willing to make a flight. It's only a flight away.
Perfect. I'll write that down. You never know what can happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the power of sharing with others instead of just keeping it to yourself.
Absolutely.
Um, Yeah, no, no, perfect. So, I guess we'll get it started with the meat of our conversation. So, I remember when we were prepping, I was sharing with you. So, I've seen the hiring process working at this startup. I joined when I was number seven, number two in customer success, but then also just working with founders, outside of the scope of startups, just founders that have traditional businesses. I've also seen the hiring, and I was specifically sharing with you this example of this chiropractor that I told her, hey, you it's not enough with just raising the pay and making sure that they have skills. You need to look into more than just that. But that person didn't listen to me, hired someone, and then in a few months she had to let that person go and then hire again another person. Anyways, I think you can go a little bit more into detail what happened there. So the big question is what's really happening when founders make bad hiring decisions?
As I was preparing for this, I thought there was a million and ways that I could answer it. And I boiled it down to bad hiring isn't necessarily a people problem, it's a systems failure. And what I mean is that founders don't make bad hires necessarily because they're bad judges of characters. Founders are doing the best that they can with what they have. It takes a certain type of mindset, confidence, and courage to even
Mm-hmm.
be a founder and entrepreneur in the first place. But they often make bad hires because they skip defining what success looks like, which I think really
Mm-hmm.
happened in your
Yeah.
scenario. They
Mm-hmm.
might what I see especially with like tech founders is that they might over index on a person's pedigree or skills, meaning, oh,
Mhm.
this person came from Google, this person came from Meta, this person came from SpaceX, and they confuse speed with progress. Like, I need this
Mhm.
done yesterday so I
Yeah.
can just get it off my plate. So I think that's the crux of it, and I'm willing to dive deeper into kind of what that means, along with some frameworks and some stories that I think can support that.
Yeah, and then hopefully I don't derail you, but also I was watching one of your YouTube videos and you mentioned how sometimes okay, maybe let's say that they do know they have defined success or something, but then when they interview candidates, it's like they go with the vibe of the person. You mentioned something along those lines, like a hunch, like using your hunch
Yeah.
as like, this person feels right. I'm gonna go with this one. Can you also dive into that as well?
Yeah, well, what the reason I created that video is because I saw somebody who had raised millions of dollars give this advice, which is like, yeah, sometimes it just feels right and you need to go with your gut. And I think as humans, we're special in that we do have intuition and we do have those things. And my point in that video was that it wasn't to say don't use your intuition. It was to say use your intuition as a data point, not
Mm-hmm.
as the data point. Meaning like, oh, like I like Gabby. She seems cool. Like we had a good conversation. And it's nothing against you, but hires solve problems,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the big punchline is that a bad hire is anyone who doesn't buy back your time. And oftentimes founders think, oh, like I've reached a certain point. I need to hire somebody because of the optics, or I need to hire somebody because my other founder friend who's making more money and is ahead of me said that they did this in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
When the fact of the matter is, they don't necessarily might not know the ins and out of your business.
Yeah.
You don't know the scenario that they were in when they hired. And hiring, again, isn't about growth. It's about creating more time and leverage for yourself as a founder. So if your hire increases the amount of stress and work and rework that you have to do, it's a bad hire. Even if maybe on paper or even in the interview that they're quote unquote talented. So that's what I meant by not hiring on vibes and not discrediting your intuition, but using it as a data point, but not only hiring with your gut because you can make a lot of, they call that cognitive bias, right? Unconscious bias.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
can cost you a lot of time and money, as you saw
Yeah.
with the founder that you worked with.
Yeah, because I mean, she was like that employee. I mean, she was such a sweet person. But just to give more insight in terms of like the culture of that business, it's great, and it was all about the prior hires. They all were fine with wearing like multiple hats, and that they actually thrive in that environment. Like that was
Yeah.
the culture, and then when this person was brought on, she knew how to do certain things, but then when she was asked, "Hey, like help here, help there," she was like, this is why I was hired. I was just hired for this, not that." Right. And so there was kind of a disconnect with, I would say, she didn't fit the culture. And that's where it's friction started to happen. Um, and that's why we had to go through that process again of like hiring another person. And now the founder was more aware of like skills, pay, but also does this person fit the culture? Is she or he okay with the culture that we have?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, um, I guess just to dive a little bit more into that, I guess my next question, because okay, we said what could go wrong, what makes managers do like bad hiring decisions, but then I guess what if our founders hearing us today, they've never hired someone, then we should go to this next question. When should founders stop trying to do everything and hire someone? How do they know it's time for
Yeah.
that?
Well, I would like to give an example before I answer that question because I was like, how can I show an example that makes it so simple?
Mhm,
Again, what I said was hire solve problems. Like you're paying somebody and you're hiring somebody to solve specific problems so that you as a founder can buy back your time. And not only
mhm,
your time, but your mental bandwidth so that you can grow the business, you can focus on that new client, you can go get more business, you can do more marketing, etc. But it's on outcomes. So this is a really good example because Gabby, you speak fluent Spanish. I'm assuming it's your first language. Imagine we have two people and we're asking them. So in one scenario, I say, we need someone who's maybe conversational in Spanish, and you're going to be a greeter at a party and you're going to greet people at the party. So, in order to do that, you don't need to know that much Spanish. Like, you need to be able to tell people where the bathroom is. You need to be able to ask, like, frequently asked questions that people in the party are going to have. So, that's example one.
mhm.
That's the outcome.
Yep.
Greet people, be friendly, be hospitable. Example two is now if I say, I'm going to drop you in a random Spanish speaking country, I'm going to drop you in Colombia, and your goal in the next week is to convince someone to go on a date with you. That's a totally different outcome. Totally different. So, in order to achieve the second outcome, you might need to understand persuasion. You
Mhm,
might need
mhm.
to understand humor. And not only humor, but what's culturally
Yeah,
funny
acceptable.
and acceptable. So not
Mhm.
only do you need to know the language, but you might need to know some slang. You might
Yeah.
need to know certain ways that certain people in that country say certain things, or else you won't get a date. So again, we still need some like that's what happens when you focus too much on skills and not enough on the outcome. The first
Mhm.
outcome was obvious. Like we need
Yeah,
somebody conversational, hospitable, show people where the bathroom is, be friendly. The second one is it's a totally different outcome.
yeah.
And I was like, wow, that makes sense. Like that, if you don't get understand that, um, yeah, maybe I can't help you. But I think that those are two different outcomes, same skill set,
Mm.
but the level of that skill set and the outcome you need to get with that skill set is two totally different things.
And that goes back to what you said of defining success, right? Like a lot of founders,
Absolutely.
they need to hire someone yesterday, right? So they want someone like ASAP, but they don't take the time to pause and think of why are they trying to hire that person? What problem are they trying to solve by hiring that individual?
Precisely. Which I think is a
Mhm,
perfect segue to your question, which is when should founders stop doing everything? And I think
mhm,
it's don't just hire because you're busy. Busy is not the signal. Constrained is the signal. So
that's right.
you're ready to hire when you're turning down revenue or you have to say no to customers because you have so much on your plate. Or you
Yeah.
have to say no to new money because you have so much on your plate. You or your health and your energy is degraded.
Mhm,
So I think it's like, are you turning down money? Is your mental health and your physical well-being being suffering? Is your team, or maybe you already have a small team, is your team blocked because of you? Is the quality of your product or service slipping because again you're
mhm.
doing everything as the founder?
Yeah.
And I think the last one is like strategic work never gets touched. Like you're not thinking about how to grow the business and how to improve it, and you're just stuck in the day-to-day ops. So I think
Mhm,
those are criteria that are very clear that founders can go through and say like, wow, like, yeah, I had to say no to this new project because I got too much on my plate, or I had to say no because I've been sick the last week, or I suffered a loss in my family, and I just can't do it. Like now is not the right time. So I think those
mhm.
are some objective criteria and a checklist that founders can use immediately.
Yeah, and I would agree with that because so we just became the company that I work for, we just became Series A. But prior to that, we were in a stage where it was only me and my manager running the customer success department. I could not take more accounts. I was just like, things were slipping. I was forgetting stuff. We were known for having the best customer service, and then that started to change. We didn't like that. So then once we got that funding, we immediately hired more people. What ended up happening is the I was having like maybe I was wearing like 5 to 6 hats. So one person came in to take over marketing. One person came in because I was doing that. One person came in to do like support tickets and all of that. The other one was a bridge between engineering and customer success. Anyways, I was doing a lot and I wasn't doing anything right anymore. Um, and we could feel the difference once we got more people to take over and do those roles specifically instead of me doing everything.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay, that's a pretty simple but useful checklist that founders should take a note of.
Yeah. And it takes self-awareness. I think there's also wrong reasons to hire, right? And I think some of those reasons are because sometimes you get into the mindset of like, I need to hire for optics, or as I said again, like maybe a colleague who's ahead of you has hired. So one of the biggest wrong reasons I see for hiring is again borrowing playbooks from other companies or other people
Mhm.
that you see or other influencers, right? Like Google
Mhm.
does it.
Yeah.
This influencer in my industry does it. And founders shouldn't outsource that type of creative problem solving, right? It's a creative and an intentional problem solving where you're like, okay, what's this person gonna do? What outcomes are they gonna achieve? And how is that gonna buy me back time so that I can do what only I can do? I call that your
Mhm.
zone of genius, right? And that takes
Mhm.
again a lot of self awareness to say,
Yeah.
Anthony, this is the only the thing that I can do and I can be best, but I need to hire Gabby to own customer success. I need to hire this person to own marketing. So it takes some humility, some self-awareness, and the right systems. Really.
Yeah, and I'm curious. So when you get founders to work with you, most of the time do you have to work to convince them like, hey, you actually need a person here or there, or are they already open when they come to you? Is there some education that happens in that process?
There absolutely is, and I think this is a perfect place for story time. So there's a founders are on a spectrum. I
Mhm.
definitely see founders who are more self-aware and clear on what they want to achieve. They get success a lot quicker and a lot more
Mhm.
rapidly. Versus if I have to come in and do some coaching and do some reflecting back, like, hey, here's what
Mhm.
I'm hearing but having been the expert in hiring, here's what you actually need. So I
Mhm.
think a good example is a client of mine. His name is Dennis, and one of his big challenges was all or nothing thinking, and this keeps
Mhm.
founders trapped. And they talk about this in cognitive behavioral therapy, but all or nothing thinking, an example of that is, oh, I said the wrong thing in this meeting. Everybody on my team hates me. And it's
Oh,
like,
I
no,
see.
you just made it like you jumped. Like when I say jump, that's mental gymnastics. That's Olympic level. But we all have those narratives in our head. And it's a
Mhm.
matter of being able to call it out and then
Mhm.
have the humility and self-awareness to address it. So
Mhm.
you don't need a perfect hire. You need someone who can take and own a slice of that chaos. So Dennis, long story short, I want to tell the whole story, but the punchline is that he delegated more than 20 hours of work a week to someone who was basically his chief of staff. His the chief of staff is a very high level executive assistant. His revenue went up, I think, 25% before the
Wow.
end of that year. But the real win was the mental bandwidth that he got
Mhm.
back. and the abundance of time he got
Mhm.
back. And I think, like, obviously, when I say you can buy back time, founders get that. But I think what founders underestimate is the leverage of your mental bandwidth of like, wow, I'm not stuck in a meeting or I'm not stuck in my inbox. I can actually think creatively about what is my next step. And that is invaluable. So
Yeah.
Dennis had built a thriving business through word of mouth, referrals. But when we started working together, he was wearing every single hat and
Wow.
he was drowning in it. He's a wealth advisor, and he had worked for these larger companies that
Mhm.
do wealth advising, but he was like, I can serve my customers better if I go out on my own. So again, it takes a certain mindset to be a
Mm.
founder. It takes a certain
Oh,
level of courage. And his growth, though, when we started, it had kind of stalled a little bit, not
yeah. Mhm.
because he lacked the ambition, not because he lacked the clients or the talent, but because he had zero time to actually build some systems that would help him scale and buy his time back. So
He
things
was
like
stretched thin.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. So things like doing events, things like doing some interesting or creative content, things like intentionally branding himself. So he was trapped in that day-to-day operations, and worse, he couldn't, yeah, he didn't really see a way out. He's like, well, I could just put my head down and just do more work, right? But the thought of that, he also had a lot of self-awareness of like, I don't want to go through that. That's not why I built my business. I built my business to serve my clients, to do what I love in my zone of genius, but to also have freedom in my life. So the question for him and for a lot of your founders in your audience, Gabby, is how do you break free when you're convinced you're the only one who could do the work? When
Yeah.
delegation feels like too risky and too
Mhm.
scary instead
Mhm.
of like, oh, I can give it away. So with
Mhm.
Dennis, where we started with was just clarity, like really getting down and designing some more intentional goals that helped pulled him out of the operations and helped him realize like, wow, now that I have these goals and I have bigger sights, I actually might need somebody to help me with this, right? And
Mm.
that's when we identified his zone of genius, right? Only the work that he could do, which was
Yeah.
really that face to face, spending time with clients, empathizing with them, right? He runs a service based business. So
Yeah.
then we tackled the bigger barrier, which was the limiting beliefs around hiring, right? So
Mhm.
he had all or nothing thinking, which was, I want to hire somebody full time. I want to honor their time. I want to give them benefits. Like, I have the perfect person, but I don't think I can hire them unless I hire them full time. And I was like, well, Dennis, you could also hire them on a small project and test it out. You could hire them as a contractor. You could hire them part time, right? So all or nothing thinking was like, I can only hire this person full time. And then I came in with, there's a myriad of different possibilities of how you could hire this person. So after, again, I coached him for about a year
Oh,
before he
wow.
made that hire. And again, there was a bunch of other projects that he
Yeah.
was working on.
Yeah.
But I think it was a matter of him getting out of his own way, also
Mhm.
trusting me as a coach to say, you know
Yeah.
what, Anthony, that feedback is hard to hear, but you're right. Right?
Yeah.
So again, the real win other than his revenue jumping is the mental bandwidth. So
Yeah.
now when I go on Instagram or I go on LinkedIn and I see him posting content or I see him on his Instagram story and he's picking his sons up from school or taking his kids to the park. I'm like, that's the joy for me, right? It's cool. You made more money. Great. Like that is something we can do. But what's the money without your health? What's the money without the freedom to be able to spend time with your family and do things and invest
Exactly.
and things of that nature? So I think that's a
Mhm.
good example of doing the work with somebody and helping them understand like you have a belief and I think it's limiting you. Here's your
Mhm.
possibilities. And let's work through that because like I said, I told that story in 2 or 3 minutes, but that was a good year's worth of work and
Yeah.
coaching and also building trust enough such that what I said with him actually landed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, and I think you pointed out something really important. Sometimes it takes time to change our mindset, but if we're open and we're patient, I think that's definitely worth it. I think I had to go through that process myself. It was more something like in terms of like personal confidence, right? Where I had to take counseling. But I think before that I sort of noticed that, but I wasn't open. So even if I seeked help, I wasn't gonna receive anything because I was not open. But once I was open, I saw a lot of it change and improvement in myself. So same for the founders. Like if you need someone, right, you need to hire someone, but you're not mentally ready for when you hire that person, even if they're perfect. I think you should take some time to work through those mindset blockers and then hire that person. So I'm glad that Dennis took the time and invested in coaching and then made the leap and now you can see the results.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
And
people need therapy, bro. Go to therapy. Like I know it's hard. I've had like 2 or 3 therapists that didn't work out. But once you find a person that you can trust and that's really good, it's invaluable because
Mhm.
you can read all the personal development books, you can meditate, exercise. It's all part of the full equation, but having another human really help you see outside of yourself, invaluable.
Yeah, I 100% recommend it. I so my first time, this is gonna take us a little bit out of topic, but I just do think this is really, really important. So the first time I heard about counseling was in my university. There was a club that went around to certain classes to talk about this. And I was like, huh, what is this? Like I hadn't heard about this before. Just because I grew up in a Hispanic community and that's not really something that we talk about. But it was that conversation changed my life because years later, once I discovered I needed that, it wasn't something completely like new to me. And then because of that, when I think my parents they had a really serious car accident like 2 years ago, they needed counseling. And because I went through that, they were open to that as well instead of just coping with that themselves. So, yeah, our dear founders, especially, they go through a lot. So if they need counseling, it's so accessible now. There's a lot of companies out there like BetterHelp. I hear it a lot, where you can take a session and that can transform your life. Um, but yeah,
Absolutely.
let's get back to the hiring topic. So let's say that our audience, our founders, they're like, Gabby, Anthony, okay, I get it. I think I am actually ready for my first hire. Um, do you have a simple framework for getting hiring right?
Absolutely. So great hiring predicts performance. We spoke about this and we spoke about outcomes and examples of those outcomes. But a great hiring system is going to help you predict whether somebody is going to perform in it. So every strong hiring system, there's really 3 things that you do. And the 3 things that I narrowed it down to were define, prove, and decide. So again, we spoke about it earlier. You need to define success.
Mhm.
In the
Mhm.
second stage, you need to now, okay, design a system and interview process to help people prove that they can achieve that success, prove that they're capable. And then you need to be able to have a system to make a decision with evidence, right? Not, again, not with your intuition, not with your gut, right? With evidence. So, um, yeah, maybe we can dive into each of those a little bit deeper, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, especially I'm curious about the evidence. What could be the evidence in hiring? But yeah, yeah, please go into each one of those.
Yeah. So define success. Again, you want to do this before you ever really start talking to potential prospects or candidates. Because if you don't define success, you'll rely on vibes and, oh, I like their energy. Like it's not a reliable predictor for success. So
Mhm.
to define success, someone that I followed for years when I first got into recruiting and said, I want to be a world-class recruiter, is I follow a gentleman named Lou Adler, and he talks about replacing job descriptions with performance profiles. So in
Mm.
order to create a performance profile, founders must answer a few questions. One of those questions is, what problems will this person own that maybe I currently have on my plate? Like
Mm.
really, how like what will they own? What are those problems that they're going to solve before you even get to skills, right?
Yeah.
Secondly, what must this person accomplish in the first 90 days? You need to put a time cap on it. So if you look at the first 90 days and you look at like the first year, like those are two really good horizons to look
Mhm.
at to time capsulate it. Um, and then the last, which I think a lot of founders skip, is what are the consequences of not filling this role? What
Interesting.
happens if, yeah, we just continue with the status quo? What are the consequences of not filling this? And more importantly, if I do hire this person and they fail, why would they have failed?
Mm.
Is it because of a broken system? Is it because I didn't document and communicate my expectations properly? Is it because I simply didn't have the self awareness or do enough internal work to say, to define these goals and these outcomes? These questions alone can eliminate 50 to 60% of bad hires. So that's the first step, the defined step.
Wow.
Um, the second step is now where we go to prove it, right? So again, don't ask if this person is good. Don't rely on vibes. You need to design a process that helps this person prove to you that they can do it. And
Mhm.
I chose those words deliberately. Like we need to also do it in a way that doesn't create friction for the person with the skill set.
Yeah.
So the closer the interview is to the job, the less guesswork is required. So every
Mhm.
interview that you have has to answer a few questions, right? Can they do this work under similar constraints and resources? Because again, if you go with pedigree, oh, this person did marketing at Google. Well, at Google, they have a ton of resources that your startup doesn't have.
Yeah.
So can they really do the work under the constraints that you're working with? Right. Secondly, what evidence do I have that demonstrates their ability to succeed? Again, we gave the example of someone being a greeter at a Spanish speaking party and someone being dropped into a random country and we're forcing them to, hey, you have to convince somebody to go on a romantic date with you.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
cool, let's talk about that. Like maybe we talk, hey, like, yeah, when's the last date you went on? And how did you convince this person to go on a date? So that's how we would go about it, or that's an example of how you could go about it with that scenario. But you
Mhm.
can't do that if you don't define the outcomes, right?
True.
So the last one that I think is also skipped is, will this person add balance to my team and raise the collective excellence or the collective talent, right? That's the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, that cultural piece that you talked about earlier.
Mhm.
So the
Mhm.
guardrails that you can use to, again, systemically help you be more disciplined as a founder, especially if you have no experience in this, is no interview should exist unless it maps to a direct outcome, right? Which we spoke about.
Yeah.
It should produce some type of evidence, some type of observable evidence, and it should help you reduce your uncertainty about if this person can do the job. So, some examples, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
If the job is to sell and close customers, maybe you have candidates make a presentation about how they would close or sell to your customer.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
If the job is to lead and manage people, maybe you run a mock management session
Yeah.
where someone has to uh, coach somebody through a difficult conversation, or maybe somebody has to, as a manager, show how they've demonstrated skills in conflict resolution, right? Customer support. Maybe you have an interview or some type of exercise where they have to resolve a customer complaint. We did that at Wobot when we hired some of our first customer success people. So it was
Mhm.
like, hey, here's a ticket, and how would you respond to this customer's ticket with empathy, but also resolve it, right?
Yep.
Now, a really fun example, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but this goes to show that there's no right or wrong answer. It's really the principle.
Yeah.
When I was hiring my first designers, I reached out to designers in my network and I was like, I've never hired designers before. Like, what the hell do I do? And I didn't use this scenario, but it got my creative juices flowing. One designer I worked with, he worked for IDEO previously, which is a
Oh,
very
yeah.
popular in the design space. So I felt as though I could trust them. But he said one of the interviews was uh, they had this person in person and they said build. They gave him a bunch of Legos, right? You
Mhm.
see, I love Legos myself. Um, but they said, build me a car with these Lego pieces within this time limit. But here's the catch. In the middle of the time limit, the interviewer changed the requirements.
Oh.
So you might ask yourself, like, what are we testing? What evidence are we trying to get? What they were really testing was, can they navigate ambiguity? Can
Yeah,
can
think
they deal with the frustration of the requirements being
yeah.
changed? How
Mhm.
how do they manage that change?
Mhm.
And I think an unintentional one, which was really interesting that they didn't expect, was humility and curiosity. Because
Yeah.
one candidate that he told me about, one candidate thought this task was beneath them. Like, why are we playing with Legos? Like, I'm here to design stuff.
Oh, that already says a lot.
That says a lot. So that's the prove
Mhm.
capabilities component, right? So work
Mhm.
simulations, right? Interview
Mhm.
questions that help them demonstrate. I like the analogy I like to use is auditions. So if
Mhm.
you were a comedian, or if you were an actor or an actress, if you were a musician, you have to audition. Show us that you can play the drums. Show
Mhm.
us that you can do a tight 5 second or 5 minute comedy set, right? What have you accomplished that's most similar to the problems that we're trying to solve? Like, that's my favorite interview question. If I could only choose one interview question, I would just use that question and then ask really intense follow up questions that help me address it. So we have
Mm.
decide, we have define, right?
Mm.
Define success, get really clear on that.
Mhm.
Step two is prove. How do I design an interview process where I help this person prove to me that they're capable of doing this?
Mhm.
And then the third step is decide with that evidence and use that signal. So using
Mm.
your gut and using your pure opinion, that's a road to chaos. Evidence creates confidence, right? So
Yeah.
every interviewer answers the same three questions when they're trying to make a decision. One is like, where did this person struggle, or where are their gaps?
Mhm.
Because nobody's perfect. Like, let's be honest. And sometimes there's gaps where you're like, hey, I'm willing to concede or compromise on the fact that they haven't worked in my industry because they're
Yeah.
so strong in sales and
Mhm.
storytelling
Mhm.
and they're humble. I don't really care. Right. Another question is, again, what outcomes and skills did they demonstrate?
Mhm.
Right. And the last question is a very simple one. Would you hire them? Yes or no? Like, if you
Mhm.
were to bet your career on it, would you hire them? Yes or no? And why? Right.
Mhm.
So, what doesn't work when you come to decide, and this is what I've spent a lot of my career coaching hiring managers and especially founders on, is what doesn't work is, well, we had a really great conversation. Like, I feel like I could have a beer with this person. I like their energy. I had a good feeling. Or they remind me of this other person I work with. Like all of that is cognitive bias,
Yeah.
right? But again, we're human. Like cognitive biases protect us. Cognitive
Mhm.
biases tell us look both ways before crossing the street,
Mhm.
right? Or if I'm in the dark and I hear a noise, cognitive bias says, oh, I might be in danger, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But it doesn't work in hiring. So what
Yeah.
does work is they did X thing at Y company with access to similar resources. Again, did they have similar resources, similar constraints? They struggle to speak about how they measured success in their last role. So honestly, it's going to be a no for me. Or, I believe they're not a strong communicator because they interrupted me multiple times when we were speaking and they went on totally unrelated tangents that weren't connected to the question I asked them.
Yeah.
See
Yeah.
how that's different from I like their energy? That's
Mhm.
what I mean by evidence, Gabby. So
Interesting.
define, prove, and decide.
Wow, those are very three important pillars, I would say, for hiring because I would say, even though I've been part of this early stage startup, something that I've been part of like being like one of the people that interviews that candidate, but haven't really worn that HR hat or recruiter hat. So this is very interesting to hear. And you could have saved just a lot of headaches. Like there was this department that we have legal engineers and we needed to hire more because we were growing super quick and we made some bad hires. Like the first four were like not a match. We found out like 3 months later. And then the director that leads that department was like, you know what? Why don't we make assessments live during the call? Um, but you just said it like we could have incorporated that from the beginning. Anyways, thank you so much. This has been super, super insightful. And I think
Absolutely.
you've given us like something that we can put into practice right now if we need to hire someone, which I always really appreciate. But also because we've given them so much homework and like action items. uh, I always like to ask our guests, what is one permission that you want to give those founders that are trying to hire someone right now if they can put everything into practice at the moment?
Mm. You have permission to hire me to help you. No, let me stop. Let me stop. Let me stop. I think the permission is the permission is to admit that you're afraid of making a mistake.
Hmm.
The permission is to have courage to say, like, they don't teach people how to be managers. They don't teach this stuff. That's why, that's what I've hung my hat on. That's why I have a job. That's why I'm in business. They don't teach these things. And I think the big risk people pose is like trying to rely on AI, right? AI can do a lot of
Yeah.
things. It can analyze data. It can help you with tasks. It can speed up, simple tasks. But AI isn't going to imagine. AI won't creatively problem solve. AI isn't going to tell a story in a way that it's never been told. So I think
Mhm.
that permission is to just have humility and have the courage to say, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And like nobody has
Mhm.
ever taught me this and get some help, right? Like get some
Yeah.
coaching. Like I didn't start off as an expert in this. I've made mistakes. I've made
Mhm.
hires that didn't work out. Um, but at the end of the day, I have at least the humility to say like, oh wow, like why didn't that person work out? Or how could we have
Mhm.
designed a better process or a better audition or assessment to help that person? So I think the permission is to just give yourself some grace and
Wow.
just
Yeah.
admit like they
Mhm.
don't teach you this stuff. You're not
Mhm.
supposed to know this stuff. Go try to get the learning. And then I think lastly is permission to go get some therapy too. Cause
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized, especially running my own business and helping people run theirs, is your business is a mirror. Your business is just going to show you who you are. Same way
Wow.
with money. Like
Yeah,
money
yeah.
doesn't fix all your problems. Money just accelerates
Exposes them faster.
and reveals who you are.
Yeah.
So business, I feel as though is the same way. Business is going to reveal all your insecurities,
Mm-hmm.
all your fears, and the path to freedom is like just accepting. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
scared. I'm afraid that if I make this hire, it's not going to work out. I'm afraid if I make this mistake, my entrepreneur friends are going to laugh at me, or like whatever
Mm-hmm.
crazy insecurities or negative self-talk that we might have. um so I think that permission is to, yeah, love self, to have courage, to give yourself permission to say, like, I'm afraid, and like hiring is
Yeah.
scary and I need help, which is where I come in. So
Thank you, Anthony. No, I really appreciate that. And I do really relate with that. Yeah, thank you so much for breaking this down, sharing all of this knowledge with our audience. And our audience, if y'all put it into practice, I am sure I totally believe that y'all can save yourselves months of pain because now you have this knowledge about how to make the hiring process a little bit smoother on your side. And Anthony, for those that they're like, I do need help, I maybe need help from you, Anthony, specifically, how can they connect with you?
two places. One is antholloway.com. So ANT and then my last name HOLLOWAY.com. I have
Hmm.
some great testimonials there. I even have a video that again elaborates on some of the work that I've done, and you can book a call.
Hmm.
Second place would be my YouTube channel. So uh I am still growing. So if you want to find me on YouTube, it's at Anthony Learns. So my first name and then Learns. Anthony Learns on YouTube, and antholloway.com if you want to see some of the people I've helped, in addition to booking a call with me to see if we might be a good fit for each other.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. And I'll put those details also in the show notes if you're in YouTube or hearing us on Spotify. Again, Anthony, thank you so much for your time. And to our audience, you don't have to be a bottleneck. There's a system for everything, including hiring some people. So, yes, listen to this podcast again if needed. Reach out to Anthony. We are here to help with what you need. And yeah, thanks again, Anthony, for all of this. And we'll see each other in our next episode.
Absolutely. Gratitude.
Bye bye.
Bye.